Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. Hit subscribe to this channel. This is a huge story. I'm not giving you a firm prediction. I think that the chances are a lot higher now that the judge in New York will recuse based on the latest stock market crash of last week. Market rebounded, but I do think there's going to be a terrible, terrible downturn and crash probably in the stock market and global markets late September, October. I think that's going to correlate directly to the judge wanting to recuse, but he said he'll decide next week. So he might not. And then he might recuse a couple weeks later, or the Supreme Court will get involved and overturn a blatantly unconstitutional guilty verdict in New York. You'd have to be a complete imbecile to believe that a state, or I should say, you'd have to be either indoctrinated or ignorant of the law. A state cannot level a federal crime at a citizen when the federal government dropped the case, didn't indict the individual. In this case, the FEC dropped the case. Former FEC chairman, trade trainer, Hans A. von Spakovsky and Bradley Smith, all experts on FEC campaign laws, stated Trump could have paid Stormy with dollar bills. It wouldn't have been against the law, okay? Because he would have done so with or without the campaign. That's what makes it, that's what circumvents any law regarding the FEC regulations. So we've talked about this endlessly. Somebody is going to, whether it's the judge recusing himself or the Supreme Court getting involved, almost certainly he'll certainly get the conviction overturned. It's just a matter of when. I think very likely before November. It really won't matter. Trump will win. Trump is on his way to winning. I think that the funny thing is that the more media gets involved, the worse it is for Paul Bartlett. Thank you. The worse it is for the stock market. Paul, thank you again. To my super chat, thank you. Let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe to this channel. The stock market, the economy is going to be directly correlated to Trump winning in 2024. I think the next couple of months, late September, October, right before November, you're probably going to see a terrible, you will unfortunately very likely see a terrible market crash because media is going to be all in on Harris and the abysmal vice presidential pick. But anyway, let's continue. Hit subscribe if you're new.
Macro Mavens founder Stephanie Pomboy. Stephanie, let's start with rate cuts. So all we've heard in the last few days is we need an emergency rate cut right now, and then another deep, like 75 basis point rate cut at the meeting in September, because that's just going to fix it all. I say pig potatoes. What say you?
Yeah. Wah. I mean, talk about snowflakes, but a little perspective here, Dagan. You know, the market is up 150% from the lows during COVID. It's given back 7.5% of that. In dollar terms, we rose 34 trillion, and we've given back 4 trillion. And they're screaming and crying because they want a rate cut and they want the Fed to bail them out of this.
That's 4 trillion in like less than 5 days. Think about that for a second. $4 trillion in less than 5 days. So imagine if there's a 1, 2 month, 3 month sell-off.
Eviscerating sell-off that they'd had to endure for one day. So no sympathy here. Additionally, as you know, and we've talked about endlessly over the years.
So if it goes down 10% from, well, actually, if it goes down, let's see, 10% would be 4,000 points. 4,000 points from the top would be about 3,600. But if you look, it was a lot lower than that last year. It was, so we could go down more than 10%. You let me know if I'm wrong here. You let me know if I'm wrong about the numbers. We go down 10%. That would be 3,600, but we were at like 3,200. And in 2022, we hit like 29, 28. So I'm going to look at my phone right now and look at the the chart. This is from what I remember. You let me know if I'm off base here. A continued sell-off would lead to a true 2008 situation. I think the Democrats, their policies have led to this directly. I wrote about that in the Federalist.
This is lather, rinse, repeat, where the Fed basically overstays accommodation too long, inflates a bubble, then, acts too slowly to address it. This time, inflation got out of control. Then they raise rates too far, too fast, drive the economy into recession, and then run in with the fire hoses the second the markets start to feel the pain. Meanwhile, middle America is the one that pays the price for all of this feckless monetary policy via a reduced dollar purchasing power after every serial, asset bubble goes bust, and they come in and print more money to numb the pain. So
on September 23rd, 2022, okay, the Dow Jones was at 29,590. Okay. So that would be, if it went down to 23, that would be a 20% sell-off. You could have a 10% one day with 4,000 points down or 3,000 points down, some, 8, 10%. Or within a 2-day span, and then it could go down within a month or 2 months to where we were in 2022. If Wall Street says, well, corporate profits will decline to where they were in 2022. If we have a recession, if we're heading into a recession, it's not beyond reason to say, well, the market's probably going to get back to where it was in 2022. Which is a full 10,000 points from where it is now. Okay? You let me know if I'm Paul. Everybody here, you let me know if I'm wrong about all of this. Hit subscribe if you're new. Paul Bartlett, thank you so very, very much. As always, thank you, Paul. I cannot thank you enough. You let me know if I'm wrong about this, ladies and gentlemen. I know I'm not wrong about the numbers. 29,590 on September 23rd, 2022. So you had a full year. And then you're going into the end of 2024 now. So a full 2 years. And when you look at 08, the market went down to where it was in 06. So it could go down 10,000 points. But then you get crypto crashing and crypto Ponzi schemes like SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried. That could be trillions and trillions of dollars lost in the matter of 3-4 months. I mean, am I wrong on this, ladies and gentlemen? Let me know in the comment section. Am I wrong on any of this? Trump's going to win. It's going to come at a great financial cost directly because of Democratic Party policies. I wrote about that in the Federalist 2 years ago.
Yeah, no sympathy over here for emergency rate cuts.
Yeah, save our asses, save our assets. That's all they care about.
So, Stephanie, you mentioned middle America. Let's talk about consumer debt. That's certainly not helping the economy. American households now owe more than $18 trillion in debt, and more than $1 trillion of that debt is on credit cards, which leads us to the biggest problem related to that, which is that more than 1 in 10 credit card holders right now are at least 3 months behind in their payments. So again, as those interest rates go up, they're high. I think the average is 20% right now plus. This is putting a crimp on the American consumer. What impact do you think this has on the economy and the American family's ability to dig out of debt?
Well, the credit card thing is sort of a consequence of what's happened in the economy, not a cause. It's, obviously we had this period where they got all this COVID stimulus, and most of them used that money to pay down credit card debt. Then when that stimulus ended, all of a sudden inflation took off, and they had to borrow on their credit cards to keep up.
So we have record highs in credit card debt, fueling consumer spending. But CNN Business, November 12th, 2022, okay, kind of close to where we were when I said the market, the Dow Jones hit around 29,000, okay? In less than a week, Sam Bankman-Fried's $16 billion fortune evaporated. So he lost $16 billion, and then they accused him, or he was convicted, on CNBC, how Sam Bankman-Fried ran $8 billion fraud. Government prosecutors. That's only one person in the world of crypto. Do you think maybe there are other individuals, ladies and gentlemen, like that criminal who defrauded $8 billion? Do you think maybe there are other people who have far worse Ponzi schemes or far worse? So if Sam Bankman-Fried ran an $8 billion fraud, which is what this CNBC article is saying, okay. And I think that ultimately he was convicted for something less than $8 billion, or it says $8 billion here. Do you think maybe there are people in crypto that have a far greater Ponzi scheme going on right now? And see, the thing with the Ponzi scheme, like Bernie Madoff, he could have survived for at least 2, 3, 4, 5 more years. When the market tanks, then the Ponzi scheme cannot exist, okay? And so there was a market downturn in 2022, which hurt FTX. So imagine how many more Ponzi schemes will be washed out of the system. And imagine how many more trillions of dollars, or billions, I should say, or maybe ultimately trillions, that leads to in terms of money lost. And this could happen easily in October.
With the rising cost of living, and now they've run up their credit card balances, as you said, to all-time record highs at 23% interest rates. Non-mortgage debt service has doubled since the Fed raised interest rates 2 years ago. So households are really feeling the pinch. I would highlight in the University of Michigan survey, they have various components. And one really sticks out to me, and that is the share of households that expect inflation will outpace their income hit an all-time high. And this data goes all the way back to the 80s. So that means that people have more dire outlook for their income, real income, than they did even during the depths of the Great Recession in 2008. So people are really feeling the squeeze. And to consider that survey was done when the unemployment rate was 4.1. I mean, heaven forbid we take the unemployment rate up to 6 or 7. What are households going to do in that environment? They're really feeling the burn now. And the employment shoe really hasn't dropped yet.
They're probably not going to vote for a Harris Waltz ticket. Stephanie Pomboy, always great.
So this is an excellent perspective on how much money was lost just in the past, just in a 5-day span the other week.
This week.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things come to mind. The first thing, of course, is that as of now, it's all fairly normative. Let's just put it in context. We know that the high for now was the 16th of July, and this sell-off is 14 sessions in the making as of Monday's low, down 9.7%. To put that in context, there have been 241 instances in the inception of the S&P in 1927 where you've had a 5% plus sell-off. And the average decline is 8.2. The median is 11.8. So put those numbers in perspective. 8.2 down, 11.8. And this one's 9.7, smack dab in the middle of the average and the median. In terms of duration, 3 weeks. They typically last 3 or 4. But here's the issue, in my mind. That's average, medium. And typically, that's not coming from such a complacent setup, right? We know we'd gone one of the longest stretches in 15 years without a 2% move down or up. And because of the steep and uncorrected nature of the preceding advance before this 9.7% sell-off, my hunch is that this one will not be average or median. and just off we go to the races, that it'll be longer in terms of magnitude or duration.
So it'll be a lot longer in terms of magnitude. The gentleman is 100% right. Brilliant analysis. Let's continue.
Sad fact, after 4 years of Biden and Harris, more Americans believe the American dream is no longer achievable. Donald Trump says he'll restore that, but how? You've mentioned getting rid of taxes on tips, 10% tariffs across the board, getting rid of most favored nation status for China. There will be a lot of pressure brought to bear against the tariffs question. How strongly, and I think a lot of people in Michigan are listening tonight, and in Ohio and other Rust Belt states, how firmly will you commit to these tariffs?
100%. Look, tariffs do two things. Number one, they bring in tremendous amounts of money, and they let you keep your jobs here. China used them for years, very successfully. They said if an American company wants to come and build a plant in China, there's no tariff. Same thing with me. If somebody wants to come build a plant and hire our auto workers, I like it, there's no tariff to be paid. But China charges us hundreds. I mean, they charge us so much. Other countries are charging us tremendous tariffs. It's a way. Look at India. They said to Harley Davidson, you have a 200% tariff on a motorcycle. But if you build your plant in India, there's no tariff. So they go and they build a plant in India, and so many other things like that. Tariffs are good. They also are good for something else, power. When a country starts getting fresh, when they start saying we're going to attack another country, and
That's what's so great about Trump. You have all of these economists, all these wonderful economists. They're such good, morally superior, wonderful liberal economists. They said nothing as Democrats were forcing their states to shut down. Governors, blue state governors, forced their states to shut down economic activity. I don't remember any economists in the New York Times or any Nobel. I mean, there might have been a couple with courage, but I don't remember economists saying, hey, wait, this is going to lead to inflation and eventually a terrible market crash. I was saying that. I'm not an economist, but I thought we were supposed to trust all these wonderful experts. Well, and they all said, a lot of them said Trump's going to, oh my God, is going to tank the economy. We had an amazing economy with Trump. When Democrats took over, or at least when his last year in office, when essentially they took over economic policy, they shut down their states. Because bureaucrats, media, multilateral or multinational organizations said, hey, you should shut down your states. Democrats, media said, Trump, you better do it. Or I should say, Trump better sign the stimulus package. What was he supposed to do? He had to sign the stimulus. If he didn't sign the stimulus, people would go hungry because Democrats literally prevented people from working. The U.S. labor force, the average age was 41 years old. The average age of somebody who perished from you-know-what was what? 73? In some instances, one state, it was 73. And then 67. The average is over 65, okay? The U.S. labor force was 40 years old, around 41 years old. So do the math on that. How logical was that? So the tariffs are short-term, or you use them for political, geopolitical leverage. But see, Democrats, they don't get that. They just let the terrible, terrible things take place. Virtual monopoly on the media narrative, which is hilarious when they say Trump's an authoritarian. It's like, well, do the intel agencies, do they side with Trump or Democrats? Oh, okay. And who's more militant? Oh, okay. So how is Trump the authoritarian?
you don't want them to, and you say, I'm sorry, if you do that, we're going to put tariffs on you, and, we're going to put tariffs. Do you know how many wars I stopped? Do you know that I had no wars? We had no wars. Remember when Hillary Clinton said, look at him, just look at him. Well, they looked at me, and the fact is that we had no wars other than I defeated ISIS, which had already started 100%.
We're going to get to foreign policy in a minute, but I just want to stay on this. The number one issue is the economy. Gas-powered cars. What happens to
the fact we had no new wars with Trump is the ultimate reason, the moral justification to vote for Trump. I mean, people would ask me, like, friends who used to be very close, or, people who disowned me, okay, whatever. They would ask me, why would you vote for Trump? It's like, well, no new wars, no war. I mean, he's the least He's anti-war. If you don't like that term, he's the least militant of any choice. He's obviously the moral choice. Oh, he's immoral. He makes fun of people. He insults people. So what? You think that is a greater issue than endless wars and quagmires and military conflict and geopolitical instability and stock market crashes? What is wrong with people? The sensibilities of the morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats don't outweigh our national security or pocketbooks or, financial stability. I'm not putting the sensibilities of people above the U.S. economy. How much of an imbecile do you have to be to do that? So yeah, Trump is the moral choice if you care about the working class, like the left does. By the way, I was at Barnes & Noble the other day, and there's a left-leaning socialist / communist, mainly socialist type of far-left publication. One of the few out there. It goes for $15, almost $15. I'm like, wow, these socialists really, they understand capitalism. They really do. But let's continue.
Them in a Harris administration.
In a Harris, they're gone. In a Trump, they're.
By the way, Jeff, thank you, Jeff. Greatly appreciated, Jeff. Thank you. Paul Bartlett, thank you so much to my super chat. Thank you so very, very much, everybody. Thank you again, Jeff and Paul.
They're thriving. And also, everything's thriving. Electric, gas power. Electric is 7%, 6% of the market. Maybe it's going to go a little bit higher. They want everybody to have an electric car.
Union jobs in Detroit.
Union jobs are going to come back. The unions are going to be, what's threatening to the union? Millions of people coming in and willing to work for a very small amount of money. The unions are under threat. I'll tell you who's hurt the most by the border. Black people, Hispanic people, and unions.
And young people going into the workforce for the first time.
Young people too. But if you think about it, black people are losing jobs. They were doing so much better under Trump. People are coming in and undercutting them and taking their jobs. Hispanic people and also unions and young people.
The real wages under your administration, even the Washington.
But Trump is mean, and he writes mean tweets.
Post had to report this, that I believe the number is you had a 19% differential between wages and inflation, right. And with Biden, it's just. It's basically barely keeping up. It's improved a little bit. It's barely keeping up with inflation. I think yours was 15.4%, but it's a big differential. So real wages were going up. So why is that the case? So people are trying to figure this out. Why? What you did it work? Why?
So I had no inflation, essentially.
Trump had real wages up, meaning that if wages increase, but they don't increase as fast as inflation, like what happened most of Biden's term, you're not making money. You're losing money in your paycheck. So that's why this disingenuous, duplicitous nonsense from, multi-million sub channels saying, "Oh, his wages are up." So what? Inflation is increasing faster than wages. So there goes your paycheck. With Trump, people were making it was 15% more than inflation because of wage growth, and inflation being so. If I understand correctly, what Laura Ingraham was talking about, the differential was 15%. Real wages were up under Trump. Let's say I have that wrong. Real wages were up under Trump all throughout Trump's tenure. Okay, people's paychecks were greater than the rise of inflation, a lot greater. Okay, plus you could buy a home with a 3% mortgage as opposed to a 7%, 6 to 7% mortgage. But he's mean. He insults people. Oh no, let's go ahead and have a financial collapse. He insults people.
Actually, I had 1%. I had no inflation.
Over the whole 4 years.
Over the whole thing. I had very little inflation. Inflation is a country buster. It broke up Germany. decades ago. In every country that has, and we have worse inflation than anybody, it is a country buster. Biden had inflation. They say it's 22%. It's much more than that.
Prices
they don't
are up average 19% under Biden. So to families that are watching this,
it's actually much more than that, though.
But on overall,
they're using things that didn't go up that much. They don't talk about interest rates that went from 2% to 10%, and you can't get
which goes to homes, Mr. President.
Right.
Young people are seeing the American dream disappear. So there's a youth differential right now. There's a youth gap in the polls. But what do you say to young people who say, I'm just going to give up on buying a house? It's not, I'll rent for the rest of my life.
I say very simply, vote for Trump. Interest rates are coming down. Energy's coming down. You're going to be able to buy a home again. You can't buy a home. You know, one of the things killing home building is regulation. There's so many regulations from the federal government on a home. It's a big percentage of the cost of the home itself. Young people are going to be able to buy again. They're going to be able to borrow again. They're going to be able
Biden
to
says he's going to have rent control, cap it at 5% rents. And I
you
imagine
do that-
Harris would agree with that.
Once you do that, you end up in a depression. We'll end up in a depression like in 1929.
American citizens.
So we're going to have more jobs than we've ever had. Look, we had that. Nobody ever had an economy pre-COVID, and then after COVID, we did a phenomenal job. We handed over a stock market. We would have had a depression. I believe if I wasn't president, a couple of people are saying this very strongly now, we would have had a depression like in 1929. That was a bad thing. COVID came in. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew how to handle it. We closed it down to China.
The one thing, unfortunately, that took place was that there was nobody that could stop blue state governors and Republican governors who went along with it from shutting down their state economies. And then then you get this disingenuous nonsense from economists or from media. Oh, well, Trump. And then, like, you know, what's her name? I forgot. Ann Coulter. Oh, Trump, debt, and he didn't do this. It's like, well, what did you want him to do? Veto the stimulus bills? Really? Every single life lost was blamed on this man. More people lost their lives with Biden. Of course, Biden wasn't blamed. Okay? So what did you want him to do? He had to sign these stimulus bills. There was no choice. He had to. Why? Because people were prevented from working or even going to a coffee shop by liberal Democrats who essentially took over Trump's presidency his last year in office. Okay, and so again, when we have a market crash, which unfortunately we will, I don't want anyone to lose money. I don't want the wealthy socialists to lose money on the left, who love the working class and they make like hundreds of thousands of dollars on their streaming platform. Millions, probably. I don't want anyone to lose money. I don't want left, right, center. I don't want anyone to lose their job. Okay, God bless everybody. But unfortunately, because of Democratic Party policies, people will lose jobs. Unfortunately, I wrote about this in The Federalist 2 years ago.
Governors then made decisions whether they wanted to keep it. Actually, the Republican governors made the right decisions. The Democrat governors closed everything down. It was up to them. It wasn't up to the president.
But you focused on lower taxes and deregulation.
Right.
Tell us how that leads to job creation.
So I cut taxes more than any other president in history, more so than Ronald Reagan. We had the biggest tax cut in history. All of a sudden, and we had business incentive cuts. And they hired people at levels that they've never hired before. As an example, Apple and other companies, they had big money, billions and billions of dollars offshore outside of this country. You couldn't bring it back. There was no mechanism to bring it back. And then the tax was too high. They had to pay like 50% tax. Who's going to do that? And I made it so that they could bring the money back. I made it much simpler, and I also reduced the tax. And the billions of dollars came pouring back into our country, and they were spending the money. So here's what we're doing. We're going to get the first thing, we're going to get energy way down. Drill, baby, drill. All right? We're going to get energy way down. That's going to lead.
Democrats drill, baby, drill also. What they do is they flood the country full of strategic petroleum reserves like Biden did. Then they beg other countries to give us oil. And it's very interesting, so disingenuous. They make it difficult for American oil and gas companies to operate, while at the same time begging other countries to give oil or to lower the price of oil, and we flood strategic petroleum reserves into our country. Totally terrible for the environment, but it feels and looks good, so that they roll with it.
The inflation. What's killed this country more than anything in the last 3.5 years is inflation inflicted upon this country by Sleepy Joe Biden. The inflation has been a disaster in this country, and it's killed the middle class. It's killing the working class, and we're going to get inflation brought down. We have to bring prices down.
How do you do that? How do you get inflation down?
If we bring energy down, other things are going to follow.
So how many jobs do you think can be created by unlocking the energy capacity in America?
Numbers that you haven't seen before, numbers that we've never seen.
What,
Oh, we were
millions?
doing it. We would, millions of jobs. That's what we need. We need millions of jobs. And we need people to come into our country, too, by the way. I don't want to say we're going to close the border, but we're going to have people come in, but it's going to be people that we should have.
In a post on Truth Social, you said that seniors should not pay tax on Social Security. And, of course, this made big news, but the Committee for a Responsible Budget says that will mean increasing deficits by $1.6 to $1.8 trillion.
Because we can cut other costs. There's so much waste in our government.
So that's what I want to ask. Where do you get the revenue to offset that? Because it's also apparently going to advance the insolvency date of Social Security's retirement trust fund by over a year.
Well, one of the things good about that is that's when people will make a deal. You know that. But we're going to take care of Social Security. We're not going to do anything to hurt our seniors. There is so much cutting. There is so much waste in this government. There's so much fat in this government. I also have no tax on tips. That's a big deal.
Are you going to make that an official line item in your economic plans?
Yes.
No tax on tips?
No tax on tips. Very simple. No tax.
What about the
So Democrats love raising taxes. They say, well, it helps the poor. Well, okay, number one, they love social safety nets, but they never ask, well, how do people get into poverty? Why are places under Democratic Party rule impoverished? Why is that the case? You can look at major blue states or like the largest blue states. Look at cities and towns, counties that are impoverished, and they were impoverished in the 80s and the 70s. And they were 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and late 2010s, and now in the 2020s. Well, why? Ever asked why? At least Trump was talking about, he tried to implement economic opportunity zones, and immediately media said, oh, it's not working. And at least he tried. And we had a great economy for every demographic under Trump. But he's mean, don't you know? He's a mean person. He's not nice like Biden and a wonderful person like Harris. So therefore, we should have a terrible economy with wonderful people, but we should deny ourselves of a great economy with Trump because he's so mean.
The debt. I mean, with no taxes on Social Security, no taxes on tips. I mean, when does $35 trillion in debt become an emergency?
We are going to, we were at a point, we were doing so well prior to COVID, just prior to COVID, we were going to start reducing debt and we're going to start reducing taxes still further. I gave the biggest tax cut ever, bigger than the Reagan tax cuts. But you know what happened? It was very interesting. We took in more revenue with a smaller percentage of taxes than we did with a big percentage of taxes. And nobody understood it. I did. Some people did. But few people understood it. But when we cut taxes, we took in much more money. The country made more money. And we were getting ready to growth. So we were getting ready to pay off debt.
If you would please explain to us how your economic policies that will impact the lives of American citizens differs from Kamala Harris's economic policies.
I don't have enough time. You'd have to give me like the entire day. We're going to, number one,
I don't have enough time. You're going to have to give me the entire day. How can you not love this man's personality? The fact that, look, if his personality is not your cup of tea, fine. But he had a great economy. So what's wrong? Why would you not vote for Trump Forget about like the nonsense about like, oh, he's a threat to democracy. Democrats don't know what the word means. They don't even have a functioning primary. Biden won his primary, by the way. What they did to Biden was like a billion times worse than what they did to Bernie Sanders. Both the 2016 primary was like the most fair and neutral, wonderful event compared to what they did this year with Biden. He's like, hey, man, I won. What? I won? I thought I won. Oh, no. Okay. It's with a heavy heart, man. And then Harris won no delegate. Now she has every delegate. So there goes democracy. But the point is, we had a great economy with Trump. Why would you not vote for Trump? I don't get it. For people who don't like Trump, like Project 2026, oh my God, oh my God. If you have a great economy, as opposed to a market crash, which is on the horizon, as opposed to inflation and interest rates sky high, which is what we have now, okay, and real wages down for most of his tenure, and mortgage rates up, and your credit card rates are up, and auto loans up. You're paying more for a new car or a used car if you have an auto loan. A lot more. A lot more. Why would you not vote for Trump? I don't get it. I don't understand the people who are like, well, Trump. I don't like Trump. Well, are you rich? Because if you're rich, then you could just vote Democrat, no problem. But if you actually, like, if you feel the inflation and high interest rates all throughout Biden's presidency, especially when he ignored inflation, before 21, why would you then continue? They would always say, especially 4 years ago, you didn't listen to the experts, and now you've perished. You deserve everything you got because you didn't listen to the experts. So what now? Is it do you use the same mentality to then chastise or try to criticize wonderful, morally superior Democrats who are suffering in this economy, who still vote Democrat? Why would you still vote Democrat? I don't get it. Then you see the world collapsing in flames, God forbid. You see the world with geopolitical instability. You still vote Democrat because Trump's mean. I mean, at a certain point, it's not just tribal and it's like your new baseball team or it's your new religion. At a certain point, maybe you should like say, okay, even if you don't want to put the country first, maybe you should say, well, will it benefit me in terms of finance? Will it benefit my pocketbook? You watching right now, is it going to benefit your pocketbook to vote for Harris or Trump? End of story. If it's Trump, vote for him.
We sit very strongly in energy. We have more energy. We have more liquid gold, as I call it, under our feet than Saudi Arabia, than Russia, than anybody. We're going to be energy dominant. We're going to make a fortune. We're going to supply it all over Europe, all over the world. We're going to be double and triple what they're doing. We're going to have tremendous energy, and we're going to lower our prices of energy. Do you know people in New England, they pay some of the highest prices in the world because we don't have a pipeline, because New York won't let a pipeline go through a very poor section of New York where they need the jobs. Number one. Number two, we're going to do a tariff system. We're going to bring back our auto jobs. We're going to say to people, we don't want your cars. We're going to tariff those products, and we're going to have reciprocal tariffs. We're going to take in a fortune, but we're going to tariff those jobs. We want them to build auto plants in the United States. So right now, some of the biggest plants in the world for automobiles are being built, you know where? In Mexico, right on the border. And they're going to make cars and sell them into the United States. And those people in Michigan that love me and that I love and that are going to give us a victory because their auto industry won't exist in 2 years if she gets elected. China's going to make, and other countries.
Like, this is not like a campaign, I'm not, a part of Trump's campaign. I just have a question. Like, if you live in Michigan or you live in Pennsylvania, you know very well they want to do away with, we'll just say, traditional sources of fuel and energy. Democrats have literally stated, we want to do away with oil. Okay. We want to do away with coal. All right. We want to do away with fracking. Okay. We want to do away with traditional, engines, and we want only electric. Does that help people in Michigan and Pennsylvania, or does that hurt them? I don't get it. I don't understand. Even if you're not in the auto industry, if you're not in energy, you live in a state where the state's going to suffer. Your business might suffer indirectly. So I just don't get it. I don't understand how 4 years of Biden and Harris, people will still vote just for the fear of Trump. Like, what are you so afraid of? They're like, oh, January. Okay, you had an entire summer, which every statistic or data analysis, oh yeah, the conservatives are cause all the violence. Like, well, but you're not addressing that entire summer. Where I agree with why people peacefully protested, but 19 lives were lost. And Democrats just looked the other way. I think Kamala Harris was a part of bailing out some of the 14,000 people arrested. So you have complete chaos that summer, led by, I'm not going to, like, there's no specific organization you could blame, but like, it's left leaning. The chaos was inspired by left leaning ideology. But that entire summer with billions in property damage never makes its way to the data or analysis of political chaos or violence. It's like, unfortunately, liberal Democrats, wonderful, wonderful people, live by skewed, very warped and twisted aggregate data and stats. Okay, that ignore overwhelming evidence, to the contrary of what they're trying to claim.
Are going to make all the cars. They're building some of the biggest auto plants. A friend of mine does that business. I said, I want to see a great auto plant. He says, you'll have to come to Mexico. Why? Because we're not building the big ones in the United States.
And you will build them here.
The biggest in the world, and we're going to have all of our people operating, and we're not going to let people come to build them in Mexico and build cars and sell them in the United States.
Won't it be more expensive?
Could you imagine Harris, Waltz, or Biden talking about any of this? I mean, let's say you're voting for the Democrats. Fine, great, God bless you. Vote for Harris, God bless you. Okay, but could you imagine Harris going into detail, or Biden? It's almost as if Democrats really don't care who they nominate or oust and then give the future presidency to. That machine, they are voting for a machine. They are choosing a machine. So the machine, I guess there are people that love that machine. But imagine Harris talking about any subject in this type of detail. I don't know of a subject that she has addressed with great detail like this.
Up Michigan and South Carolina and other places.
Won't it be more expensive if you do
it
here?
No, it won't be. It'll be great. It'll be unbelievable. And by the way, when you add it all up, including the taxes and everything else, we're going to create jobs like you've never created before. If you look at auto manufacturing, it's down 64% from its high, number of jobs and everything else. But we used to be the world manufacturer, and every year it gets eaten away. And a big factor is Mexico. Mexico stole 32% of our auto manufacturing. We're going to say, you want to do that? We're putting tariffs on your cars coming in. You take those brilliant people that own these factories, they got to build in the United States, and they have to hire U.S. workers. And whether it's union or non-union, look, the United Auto Workers, I know them very well. They vote for me. They have a stupid person leading them, but they vote for me. They're going to love Donald Trump more than ever before. We're going to create in that area, the most traditional area.
If you're a union worker and your unions have literally asked the U.S. government for tariffs because other countries were, flooding steel or stealing intellectual property or whatever, and you don't vote for Trump, I don't get it. And then you have all the issues with the border and unions, okay, which hurts unions. I just don't get it. The sensibilities of half the country looks at politics nowadays from sensibility, from the vantage point of what they view as decorum or sensibilities. They say, well, I don't like Trump. He's not good for the country. Well, why? He's mean and he insults people. But what about the great economy and great foreign policy. Oh, well, Biden was just as good. Well, then why was he ousted? And why are we about to have a stock market crash? And why are mortgage rates double? Why are interest rates and inflation through the roof? Why are jobs? Why is unemployment creeping up? Like, unemployment is going up the closer we get to November 5th, and still people are like, you know what? I don't like Trump.
We're going to have more auto jobs than we've ever had. We're bringing back the automobile industry, and we're going to do that with tariffs. We're going to do that by saying we're not going to accept. You know, I put the tariffs on Chinese cars. You know that. Now Biden wants to take the tariffs off of Chinese cars. He wants to just tax the electric car. That's not good enough. So we're going to have more auto production in the United States than we've ever had before, and it's going to happen very fast.
So this will be the first 100 days?
I'll get that done in less than 100 days. I'll get that done in the first 2 weeks.
By the way, the market crash will be expedited. Unfortunately, I don't want it to happen, but media will say Harris is up by 3 points. Going into October, Harris will likely be up by, who knows? Who knows? If the market crash hasn't happened yet, we're very likely going to see a crash, either before or after. We're going to see a crash, almost certainly, either before or after November, okay? When Democrats start talking about corporate tax rates and going through the roof, that is frightening to, a large part of Wall Street, and understandably so. So the more media says Harris is going to win, Trump's going to lose, the more Wall Street freaks out, which is hilarious. I mean, it's not good for people's pocketbooks, but you had a little glimpse, unfortunately, of what I've been saying for 2 years the other day. It wasn't just a correction. It was unfortunately a precursor. And I've been telling you the biggest things that drive me. Number one, I'm against. So anybody who, if you ever wonder what drives H.A. Goodman, why I'm, what this channel is about, what my writing is about, whatever. Number one, I am against counterinsurgency conflicts where we send Americans to places in the world, thousands of miles away, where they don't know who the enemy is, and it's an unwinnable quagmire. This is the greatest immorality. We should never do that, ever, ever, ever. And endless wars, I'm against that. And we should always focus on finding peace, which is not part of the Democratic Party's foreign policy on anything. You can see the calamities in the world today, okay? Didn't happen under Trump, okay? And that doesn't mean being a pacifist, by the way, okay? Trump is anti-war, he's not a pacifist. There's a difference, okay? Number two, I want a great economy. We had more manufacturing jobs in Trump's 3 years than Obama's 8 years. That's a fact. We lost 200,000, I believe, under President Obama. I believe so. I believe. I think that's the correct number. We lost about 200,000 manufacturing jobs in 8 years of President Obama. Anyway, hit subscribe, people. God bless you all. I love you all. Thank you so very much. Paul Bartlett, Jeff, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. To my super chat, thank you. To my viewers around the world, in Australia, Paul, and around the world, thank you. In the Philippines, in New Zealand, Nepal, in France, UK,